My name's Melissa. I'm from California originally, but I've been here almost 20 years, so I guess I'm almost native.
What brought you to Arizona?
Originally, my ex-husband. He had family here, and just kind of after he passed, I ended up coming back here with my kids because they liked it and it kind of felt like home, and I've been here ever since.
Got you. How many kids do you have?
3.
You guys moved out here to be closer to family and kind of like...
Yeah, he wanted to be closer to family, but he kind of burned his bridges, so we ended up moving to Michigan, and then he kind of, everything just kind of got out of control there. He had a drinking problem, and he committed suicide, and I hated Michigan to start with, and there was no reason to stay there after he passed, so we came back out here where it was sunny, and I never had to shovel snow again.
Right. Was there something that happened in Michigan that...
Not really. It was, he was a lot older than me. I was wife number 3. He was 20 years older than me,
Gotcha.
so it was a pretty good age gap. And he had been a pretty heavy drinker, I guess, since high school. And it had just gotten to the point where he couldn't maintain it anymore. I guess he'd been a functioning alcoholic for most of his life, but I mean, it got so bad to the point where he would be drunk before he got home from work, and when he got home, I'd have to hide his phone because he'd try and call his bosses so that he could cuss them out and tell them how he could do their jobs better than him, or better than they could. And it got really, really out of control. And then one day he just, I guess, decided he didn't want. I mean, he had apparently been suicidal off and on for most of his life. So it wasn't like a complete out of the blue shock. It was more of a shock that he actually did it because he threatened it almost every day.
And you said, so he was functioning as an alcoholic at first, and then it kind of just...
It spiraled out of control to where, I mean, he would be drinking at work, he'd be drinking at home. He even went so far as, it got so bad that I took our daughters and I left for about 3 months because I told him, either you're going to get help and we're going to get counseling, or this isn't going to work. I'm not going to raise the kids around this, and I'm not going to live around this. If you want to drink yourself to death, that's fine. He got a counselor, got like on medication that was supposed to help him with depression and all that kind of stuff. And he was paying for basically just medication appointments so he could hide the medications. After he passed, I found like almost a year worth of medication stashed away. So I'm like, why even bother, going? I mean, it obviously wasn't working because I knew he was drinking. Everybody knew he was drinking, and it just...
I'm sorry. These medications were to kind of like wean him off of the drinking, or...
I think it was supposed to help him deal, if I remember right, it was like for depression and anxiety, because that's what I guess his counselor thought was the root cause of, him wanting to drink. But I think initially he was taking the medicine, but he didn't like how he felt on it, so he just, I guess, stopped taking it and kept getting the refills.
Did he have to get therapy for the medication, or
he was supposed to. That was another thing I found out that he hadn't exactly been honest about. Was I found out, like, I want to say about a week before he passed, that he had quit even going to they said they're going to have to quit prescribing the medications because he'd missed so many appointments. And they left the message with me instead of going to his phone. And I'm like, oh really? How many has he missed? And it was like 6 appointments or something like that. And he only had them like every, like I think, I want to say like 2 to 4 weeks, thereabouts. So I mean, you're talking months of appointments that he just flat out missed. I mean, everyone knew that he was extremely depressed, but he was also like probably the most insane narcissist I've ever met in my life. I didn't even know what that word was until I married him. And by the time he passed, my head was so screwed up. I barely knew my own name. I was barely a shell of a person. I gained like 60 pounds the whole time that we were married because I wasn't supposed to go anywhere. I wasn't supposed to do anything. But somehow I was supposed to magically come up with, money to split the bills with him. But then he'd complain about, me working, and it's like everything, at the end, everything I did was wrong. I found out he'd been having affairs almost the entire time that we were married, and that I guess right before he died, him and his ex-wife were talking about getting back together, because that was another thing he threw in my face constantly, is that I ruined his life, pretty much, that he should have stayed with her, and that, that I was the worst mistake he'd ever made, and, he would have been happy if only he'd stayed with her. And like, we met working on a cruise ship in Hawaii, and he was a restaurant manager and I was a restaurant manager, and he told me that he was in the middle of a divorce and he couldn't afford to, have his own place and support his family at the same time. So, being the generous, kind, loving man that he was, he, sacrificed his happiness and comfort and went to go work on a ship and send all the money home to the family. And I found out that wasn't true when I got a phone call from his wife, basically letting me know that she knew all about me, apparently, and that, he's been cheating pretty much the whole 24 years they were married. And, she was going to tell him this time she'd had enough, and either, her or me. So it wasn't exactly like it was his choice. She actually is the one that finally said enough's enough. Mm-hmm. And she's there.
Go over like a few things that happen when you're dealing with a narcissist.
With a narcissist, usually it's a very gradual process. You don't even realize all of the manipulation and the control and the changes that they're exerting. It's kind of like the frog in the petri dish, how it's an old experiment that if you put a frog in a petri dish and over a Bunsen burner and turned it up 1 degree at a time, the frog wouldn't even realize it was boiling until it was boiling. And that's exactly what it's like with a narcissist. I didn't even realize how much freedom I gave up, how many decisions and choices I gave up, how much of my life I gave up, until all of a sudden it just kind of hit me like, a freight train. Like, oh my God, I have no friends. I don't talk to family. I don't get to go anywhere except the grocery store and to pick the kids up and drop them off at school. And even that I had to walk because he didn't feel like I needed a car. Even though, I had my own money to buy a car, I wasn't allowed to have one. But, 6 months in, a year in, because they are so charismatic, they are so, they're like I guess like a relationship on steroids almost. Mm-hmm. Most people are not familiar with the phrase love bombing, but when you first, meet a narcissist and you first get together with them, you are the center of their world. They put you on a pedestal so high that, God himself is having to look up at you. I mean, there's nothing you can do that's wrong. I mean, you walk on water. You are, the person they've been looking for their entire life. You are their dream person, their ideal, everything. And you're just so blown away by, all of that. And unfortunately, true narcissists usually find very broken people that come from, either, abusive homes or from, broken relationships where they're not used to all that, that praise and that affection and, feeling important to anybody really. So it's like a double whammy with that, because then all of a sudden you're getting just this, inundation of everything you never even thought existed except in the movies. And then slowly they start, finding a little thing here that just, oh, no, you're okay. It's just, maybe next time do this. And maybe next time, we could do that. Or, and it's like you think it's just like suggestions. And then it starts turning more and more. And then all of a sudden it's the outright, the first explosion is like, leaves you so gutted that you're like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? Like, you literally want to curl up and die because you feel like you are so horrible and just worthless and evil that how could you hurt this person? How could you upset them so much? When all they do is, love you and take care of you and care about you. And, how could you have possibly screwed up so badly? A great example of that was when I found out I was pregnant with our first daughter. We'd been talking about having kids, and we actually, we planned it. And it wasn't like, just oh, hey, let's just, have a kid one time. I had to have, an IUD taken out, and I was on birth control as well. So, I mean, it was a process. It wasn't just like an overnight spur of the moment thing. We had talked about it on 6 or 7 different occasions. Like, okay, this is the plan. Yeah. And first shot, she was ready to be here, I guess. And as soon as I told him, hey, guess what? He flew into a rage. He was livid. He was screaming and yelling at me. He actually kicked me out, even though we were, both on the lease. And then after 2 days of me sleeping in my car and just absolutely like, what did I miss? What did I get wrong? He called and he said that I could come back home, but I had to sleep in the spare bedroom. And I was just devastated. I cried every single night. And he spent probably the next month or two pretty much demanding I have an abortion. And I said, no, I told you since the day we met, I don't believe in that, period. If anything happens, we're having it, so get used to the idea. I said, and what's worse is we actually talked about this, we planned this. I told you when I had my doctor's appointment and everything to, so that this would be a possibility. And I even reminded you every time that, we got together, okay, remember, I'm not on anything, so... And he claims that he was drunk every time we had those conversations, that he did not remember it and that I tricked him and I trapped him.
Did you realize he was a narcissist at that point, or?
No, I pretty much, I figured that, because he was so much older than me, that I was just a young, dumb kid and that, I had a lot to learn. Mm-hmm. And, he was, such a great businessman, and he was, so, worldly wise, and he was so good with finances that, I was a screw up, and, he was, being kind enough to put up with me and all of my, BS pretty much, and stick it out with me. And I didn't even realize, until it got towards like the end of the marriage, that I was actually the one that was putting up with all the crap, and I was the one sticking it out. There's a reason that, at 50 years old, he had no friends. I mean, none. Most people would either love him or hate him right off the bat. There was no, two ways about it. He wasn't able to maintain that charm, mm-hmm. That, would kind of lure everybody in. And, he started doing, really like squirrely, dishonest stuff. Like, he'd keep employees' final paychecks, like if they'd quit, or he'd fire them and wouldn't say anything about it, and he'd cash them himself. The more I found out about that kind of stuff, I was like, who are you? Like, you're lecturing me on, what kind of mom you think I am. I mean, he was such a control freak and such a narcissist. He actually gave me panic attacks when I was trying to, figure out nursing our daughter, because he would sit there and he would critique me and criticize me about every way I was doing it wrong and how he could do it better.
As if he knows.
He would say he could do it better. And I'm like, okay, well, that would be awesome, but I've got the parts and you don't, so...
It doesn't work like that.
Exactly. But he still, he knew better, and, I was doing everything wrong.
You talked to me through email about you meet somebody else eventually.
Yeah. And it was, I'm going to say it was probably a stupid rebound, because I was so love-starved and just starved for human contact, honestly, mm-hmm. at that point that, it was a guy, I had known him for almost 17 years, mm-hmm. And I had never seen this other side of him. He was also a raging alcoholic, but he was psychotically violent. He pretty much, the 5 or so years that we were together, he tried to kill me almost every day of that 5 years. Within a month of us getting together, he put me in the hospital for the first time. He was physically, mentally, verbally. He's another one that I would say definitely, I don't know if he would qualify as a full-blown narcissist, but he had very strong narcissistic tendencies, because he felt that, the world owed him and I owed him, and the whole time that we were together, he maybe worked 6 months of the whole time. He felt that he was entitled to, my car, my house, my money, that he should be able to, parent the girls as if they were his. And that was the one thing I told him, don't do not.
Was he like more of the bad boy type, or was he like your ex-husband?
He was a wannabe bad boy. He thought he was a bad boy, but I've never seen a 6'6", 250-pound, used to be basketball star turn into such a crying little baby in my life. I mean, everything. He had the chip on his shoulder of, poor me, the victim, kind of victim mentality that, everybody's out to get him, everybody's mean to him, everybody's, trying to hurt him. He was just a nightmare. We actually moved, at one point we actually moved out of state up to Reno to be near my dad, and his mom put him on a plane without even telling me to fly right back up to come and stay with us. And he wouldn't leave. The only way I could ever get him out of the house was, if I could get him arrested. But he learned how to play hide and go seek with the cops, so that he would just basically keep them running in circles, chasing him. And they aren't going to do that for hours and hours or, days even. Even when he stole my car, they looked for about 30 minutes and they said, sorry, ma'am, we can't find him. So, if he comes back, let us know. The last icing on the cake, one that was just beautiful, was... I actually was able to have the police show up and arrest him, or so I thought. And they read him. I heard them read him his rights. They handcuffed him and they took him off to jail, like they'd done, 7, 8 other times. And I'm like, me and the girls were just like, they never actually got to see him hurt me. I made sure of that. But it wasn't hard to kind of guess, when the next morning, mom would have, bruises or cuts or scrapes. There's, makeup only does so much.
Where's your family at this time? What's your relationship like with your family?
As far as I'm concerned, I don't have a family. Okay. My dad and my one brother, they're the only ones that I still speak to, or that really even care if I'm alive or not. They're very religious and very judgmental, and pretty much God is an excuse for, God agrees with whatever kind of their opinions are. If they want to do something, then, thus saith the Lord. If they don't, thus saith the Lord.
When did the breakdown of your relationship with your family happen?
It kind of, we were all never really super, super close. I would say my parents, they were probably one of the most toxic combinations that ever could have existed. Yeah. My mom, I would say, is classic borderline personality disorder. My dad, I would say, bipolar. And they, half the time they would forget us kids even existed unless they were fighting. And because, of course, they didn't believe in putting their hands on each other, they would decide that we need to be disciplined for something we did. When
there's an issue within the parental unit that kind of affects the children.
Oh, yeah.
How do you feel like that's affect you throughout life?
Probably the biggest, I guess, kind of shock came when, me and my brothers realized, the whole time we were growing up, we thought our dad was just this psychotic, evil, raging monster, and that he was the bad guy and he was the evil one. And then we finally, it kind of dawned on all of us almost at the same time that, oh my God, no, mom's actually the really screwed up one, because she would purposely do things, quietly to instigate him and set him off and stir him up, usually to get a certain effect. Like if she wanted to make a scene, so she could, run to the pastor, or so she could gossip to her girlfriends. She knew how to trigger him on cue. She was so messed up. I mean, she didn't really have friends for the earlier part of me and my brothers growing up, so I was her friend. I was her counselor. I was 5 and 6 years old. I was her marriage counselor basically. Mm-hmm. I was hearing all the everything that was wrong with their marriage in great detail. I was hearing about our finances, stuff that a 5 or 6 year old should have no inkling even exists.
Relationship with your kids? Does she have any relationship with you?
No.
So there's
she's hated my daughters ever since they were born. She doesn't like anything. If she can't control it, she has no part of it. When we went to go visit her, when I left my husband for that 3 months, we went to go and stay with her and visit her because I was hoping to try and maybe, repair some kind of relationship, because I mean, you know, your whole life you want a mom, you want your dad, you know, that's not something that a kid just goes, oh, I don't care if I have parents or not, you know. There's always going to be a part of you that's looking for that. Those last strings kind of snapped when she was pretty much fighting with my 4-month-old because she was being stubborn and strong-willed and refused to take a nap. I'm like,
those are her words?
Yes,
wow.
Yes, and I'm like, she's 4 months old. This is a new place. She doesn't know you. She's used to me rocking her and nursing her to sleep. You're doing neither. You're just demanding that she go to sleep and yelling at her. Who yells and fights with a 4-month-old? What is wrong with you? And she's like, you know, you're gonna spoil her. You're gonna ruin her. I'm like, you can't spoil a baby by holding it and loving it to sleep. Like what the hell is wrong with you? And that's where, like, I finally, and I mean, and same thing with Haley, my older one. She just was combative with them. She didn't see them as like her grandbabies. She saw them as, you know, things to be conquered and subdued. Because of how screwed up like my childhood was, I was absolutely determined that my kids, they were going to know from the moment that they came into existence that I loved them more than anything, that I would go through hell, I would die, I would do whatever I had to make sure that they were okay and make sure that they knew that I loved them.
And they're here in Arizona?
Yeah.
Okay, and you have 2, right?
Yeah, I have I have a third one. She's 24 now, but she's not speaking to me currently. That was also part of my mother's wonderful ministrations. I had Shabri when I was 19, and my mom talked me into moving from California out to Delaware, where, you know, she'd set up, you know, with her new husband. And you know, she's like, oh, you know, I'll watch the baby. You can go to school. You can work whatever you want to do. You know, just so you can get, you know, everything together and blah 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 blah. And almost as soon as I got out there, she just ripped the rug out from underneath me. She instantly couldn't watch my daughter, and I had to put her in daycare. And that was like, you know, we're talking 1999, 2000. I want to say that was something like almost $200 a week, even back then, because she was, you know, 6 months old. And we were living with my mom in her basement. And my mom, she felt that I was an evil influence on the home, and that even though I was paying her rent, that I was corrupting their home. Had to get an apartment right away. Had to put my daughter in daycare right away, and I was only making like $8 an hour. Yeah. And you can't, I mean, even in 2000, that was not a lot of money. And almost as soon as, you know, I got all, you know, everything, I was like just almost paycheck to paycheck, not quite, but almost there. I had to figure out, you know, what bill I wasn't going to pay this week to get it to work. And then my car blew up right after I literally was driving home from the mechanic that she recommended, and I just put the last $1,500 from my savings into getting, you know, figuring out what was wrong with my car. So now I have no car, no way of getting to work, and Delaware did not have public transit except like in the big heart of the city. So I'm pretty much screwed. I'm like, okay, I have no idea what I'm going to do. And then all of a sudden, like, you know, just you know, light from heaven. Oh, Bill and Terry, they said since they're not working right now, they'll take care of the baby for you. And I'm like, what? Wow, okay, maybe this is what it's like having a family. Wow, really? Like they'll you know, and I was so happy because it killed me having to put her in daycare in the first place. I didn't want her with strangers. So I pull her out of daycare, and I'm stoked because that's going to save me like $800 a month. And I'll be able to, you know, I went and I got, you know, used to me with a new car, but it was a used car. And I could afford the payments, and everything was good. And then not even 2 weeks later, they announced that they just accepted a job in Sacramento, California. I'm like, oh, well, what am I supposed to do? And they're like, well, tell you what, why don't you let us, you know, take her for, you know, like, you know, 3 to 6 months while you get everything in order. You can get her, you know, get signed up for daycare again and blah, 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 blah. You know, and you know, once you have everything, you know, set up, you can come back and get her, you know. And I'm like, it took me almost a month of just trying to find any last minute miracle, any other option, any other solution. My mom wasn't exactly, you know, stepping up to help or offer any solutions other than that. She was pushing that hardcore, like almost every conversation. It took a minute for me to try and get stuff together, because having to buy the new car, that was, that put me back a little bit, and I was starting a new job. And not even 3 months after they moved, I got paperwork in the mail that they were filing for adoption based on abandonment. And that's such bullshit, because the day that they left, I literally locked myself in my room, in my closet, and I didn't come out for 3 days. I wanted to die. They raised her completely different than I ever would have. She was raised as an only child, very, very spoiled, lots of money, very, very selfish, very, I hate to say it, but I would have to say narcissist bordering on sociopath. She likes messing with people's heads, and she brags about it.
Has she ever tried to talk to you?
Yeah, when she was 13, she actually contacted me out of the blue on Facebook, and it was probably one of the happiest moments, most terrifying, but happiest moments of my life, because I hadn't been allowed to see her since she was 18 months old. And we started talking. I went out there to visit her. She flew back with me. She started spending, summers, and we got really close. And something changed. There was a side to her that I started seeing that was really, really messed up. Like I caught her one time trying to put mustard and chili sauce in Emma's bottle when she was, like a year and a half old. And I caught him like, what do you, oh, I just thought it was a joke. And Haley said that she'd seen her do stuff like that before too. And I've heard stories from when she was a kid of things that she had done to other kids. She got kicked out of almost every preschool, to the point where she couldn't go to preschool. She had to wait until kindergarten. None of them would take her. Almost got kicked out of kindergarten for hurting other kids and like biting them and purposely doing mean things. And then she knew to be sneaky about it, to where it would look like the kids just got hurt. That her parents, they wouldn't take her to a counselor or to see anybody until she finally ended up in a mental hospital. That was about 4 years ago, I think. And that was pretty much when we stopped communicating. She came out to see us like one more time right after I was diagnosed with leukemia. She somehow got it into her head. She blamed me for her not having a relationship with her dad.
Tell us when you got diagnosed with the leukemia.
That was in fall of 2019. And apparently I guess I had it probably longer than that. It was crazy. It was just completely out of the blue. I went in for just a normal, physical, like a well check or whatever. And I hadn't even made it home from the doctor's office. And they were like, can you come back in first thing tomorrow morning and retake your blood test? And I'm like, yeah, I guess. I mean, is it really that important? Like, yeah, no, we really need you to come back in like first thing in the morning. And I went back in, and I guess by noon they had the results, and they asked how soon I could get into the office. It's the first time I've ever had a doctor and a nurse sit me down in like their office, not in like a patient room. Yeah. Well, there's no easy way to tell you this, but you have leukemia. I'm like, isn't that what like kids get? Like, what do you mean I have leukemia? No one in my family has leukemia. Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I actually retested your labs a third time myself right before you got in, and your white blood cell count is like at like 97,000, and like a normal range I think is like 300 to like 1,500 maybe if you have a cold. If you have a really bad cold or flu, pneumonia, maybe 3,000.
So the chemo didn't have any effect? It just didn't work at all?
No, actually, it worked really, really, really well. But it made me really, really sick. But,
so you got through the chemo and you said you got better?
Yeah, they said I was like 0.5% away from them saying that I was completely in remission. And then my life went to complete hell, and I was like, well, screw it. I'm not gonna, be stuck in, needing to be stuck in bed and, being homeless and, hiding from a crazy person. Shortly after, so I was able to get rid of the psycho narcissist um, but it cost me everything. Backtrack to when I said that I thought that they were arresting him and taking him to jail. They didn't. They took him around the block and they cut him loose. And 30 minutes later, he crawled through my bedroom window and held me hostage for a week. It's here in Phoenix. And it was 2 female cops too. That's the part I really don't understand, because he beat the shit out of me. He did not leave me alone for a single minute. He took my car keys, he took my phone, he took my money. I wasn't allowed to shower alone. I wasn't allowed to use the bathroom alone. He beat the shit out of me for almost the whole week. He would choke me unconscious, beating my head into the floor, and it was like a solid vinyl floor over concrete. He would stop right before, he went too far and killed me, just to let me wake up and regain consciousness again for a minute so he could do it all over again.
Was he drunk or anything, or?
He was drunk and he had been using meth, and he had lost what little shred of his mind he had. I caught him walking around the house, and he would be talking to himself, and he'd pick up something like say a book, and if it didn't feel like it weighed the right weight, like if it was too heavy or if it was too light, it was evil, and he'd throw it away. Haley, she saw him actually hurt me, and she told him to get the fuck away from my mom.
Yeah.
Which I'm so proud of her for being so brave, but I'm so angry that she had to be.
This were a script, and you can write the script of your life. What happens after this? What's the rest?
The Hollywood version or the real world version? Justice. Everybody that played a role in this movie, setting me up, setting my girls up, screwing us over, hurting us, ripping us off, they'd get justice.